Imagine spending years mastering a skill, only to realize everything you believed was wrong. Sounds terrifying, right? But what if I told you that the ability to unlearn and rethink is the real superpower in today's world? Most people stick to their beliefs like a life raft in the middle of a storm. But what if the life raft itself is sinking? This is the core idea of Think Again by Adam Grant, a book that challenges us to rethink, relearn, and evolve. Before you decide if this video is worth watching, ask yourself, when was the last time you changed your mind about something important? If you can't remember, keep watching. You might be in for a life-changing lesson. Meet Jake, a top-tier investment banker who prided himself on his expertise. He had always believed that success came from confidence and unwavering beliefs. But then, in the 2008 financial crash, he lost everything: his job, his savings, his identity. Why? Because he was too rigid in his thinking, ignoring signals that his strategies were flawed. One day, while attending a seminar, he came across a simple yet powerful idea. The smartest people aren't those who have all the answers. They're the ones who keep questioning. This revelation changed his life. He started embracing uncertainty, challenging his assumptions, and seeking truth over comfort. And guess what? Within a few years, he built a new career, one where he thrived, not because he was always right, but because he had the courage to rethink. What if the key to winning in life is not doubling down on what you know, but questioning it? Lesson 1. Be a scientist, not a preacher, prosecutor, or politician. Imagine this. You're in the middle of a heated debate with a friend about a topic you both care deeply about. Your instinct? Prove them wrong. Show them why your perspective is superior. Or maybe you try to defend your beliefs at all costs, unwilling to budge an inch. Sound familiar? The truth is, most of us engage in arguments not to learn, but to win. We unconsciously slip into one of three roles. The preacher defends their beliefs as absolute truth and refuses to question them. The prosecutor focuses on proving the other person wrong rather than examining their own stance. The politician tries to say what will win approval rather than what is actually right. But here's the problem. None of these mindsets actually lead to growth. If your goal is just to defend, attack, or seek validation, you're not really engaging with new ideas. You're just reinforcing old ones. And that's where the fourth mindset comes in, the mindset of a scientist. Unlike preachers, prosecutors, or politicians, scientists don't cling to beliefs, they test them. They form hypotheses, experiment, gather evidence, and adjust their conclusions based on what they discover. This mindset is what separates great thinkers from average ones. When you approach life like a scientist, you're not afraid to admit when you're wrong. In fact, you see being wrong as an opportunity to grow, not a personal failure. Think about it. If a scientist ran an experiment and the results disprove their hypothesis, would they get angry and refuse to accept the data? No. They'd refine their hypothesis and try again. That's how progress is made. Let's say you have a strong opinion about something, maybe a political issue, a personal belief, or even something simple like whether pineapple belongs on pizza. When someone disagrees with you, how do you react? Do you defend your stance like a preacher, dismissing any counter-arguments as ignorance? Do you go into prosecutor mode, determined to tear down their reasoning? Do you act like a politician, shifting your opinion to fit in with the crowd? Or do you act like a scientist, asking questions, listening to their viewpoint, and considering whether new evidence should change your mind? This mindset shift can transform the way you think, learn, and communicate. It makes you more open-minded, more persuasive, and ultimately more intelligent. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is a perfect example of a scientific thinker. He once said, "People who are right a lot of the time are people who often change their minds." Instead of stubbornly sticking to his initial ideas, Bezos encourages his team to challenge assumptions and adapt. When Amazon first started, it was just an online bookstore. If Bezos had been stuck in preacher mode, he would have defended that idea endlessly. If he had been a prosecutor, he would have tried to prove competitors wrong rather than innovate. If he had been a politician, he might have just followed market trends instead of setting them. But by thinking like a scientist, he tested new ideas, accepted when he was wrong, and constantly evolved, turning Amazon into one of the most successful companies in the world. So how do you train yourself to think more like a scientist? Here are some simple but powerful steps. 1. Challenge your own beliefs. Pick one of your strongest beliefs. Now, ask yourself, why do I believe this? What evidence supports it? What evidence could disprove it? If I were wrong, how would I know? By regularly questioning your own ideas, you become more intellectually flexible and less likely to fall into the trap of blind certainty. 2. Seek out contradictory views. Most people live in echo chambers, surrounding themselves with information that reinforces their existing beliefs. Break out of that cycle by reading articles or books that challenge your perspective, engaging in conversations with people who think differently, listening without immediately forming a counterargument. The goal isn't to agree with everything. You just want to understand different viewpoints and refine your own thinking. 3. Separate ego from ideas. One of the biggest reasons people resist changing their minds is ego. Admitting you were wrong can feel like a personal attack on your intelligence. But in reality, changing your mind when presented with better evidence is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. The best thinkers don't tie their identity to their beliefs. They see beliefs as tools, useful only if they help us understand reality more accurately. If a tool becomes outdated, they replace it with a better one. 4. Embrace the power of "I don't know." Many people feel pressured to have an opinion on everything, but real intellectual humility comes from being comfortable with uncertainty. Instead of pretending to have all the answers, try saying, "I'm not sure. I need to look into that more. I hadn't considered that perspective before. I might be wrong. Let me think about it." By acknowledging uncertainty, you open yourself up to learning and growth. Next time you find yourself in a debate or disagreement, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I here to win or to learn? If you're just trying to win, you're acting like a preacher, prosecutor, or politician. But if you're genuinely trying to understand, question, and refine your perspective, you're thinking like a scientist. And that mindset, it's what will set you apart from the crowd and make you a better thinker, communicator, and problem solver. So, what's your next experiment? Lesson 2. The joy of being wrong. Think back to a time when you were absolutely convinced you were right about something, only to later realize you were completely wrong. How did it feel? Embarrassing? Frustrating? Maybe even a little humiliating? Most of us hate being wrong. It bruises our ego and makes us feel foolish. But what if I told you that being wrong is actually one of the best things that can happen to you? The smartest people in the world don't just tolerate being wrong, they celebrate it. Because every time they're proven wrong, it means they've learned something new. From a young age, we're taught that being right is good and being wrong is bad. In school, getting the correct answer earns you praise, while mistakes lead to red marks and lower grades. In debates, the person who wins is the one who doesn't back down. In arguments, admitting you're wrong can feel like defeat. But here's the truth. White heavy checkmark being wrong is not a failure. It's feedback. White heavy checkmark being wrong doesn't make you less intelligent. It makes you more intelligent. White heavy checkmark: being wrong is not the end. It's the beginning of a new, better understanding. If you always insist on being right, you stop growing. If you embrace being wrong, you open the door to new knowledge. Let's look at some of the greatest thinkers in history. People like Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, and Elon Musk. What do they all have in common? They never saw being wrong as a weakness. Instead, they used it as a tool for discovery. Example: Albert Einstein and the expanding universe. Einstein once believed the universe was static, that it neither expanded nor contracted. He even introduced a mathematical concept, the cosmological constant, to support this idea. But later, when Edwin Hubble's observations showed that the universe was actually expanding, Einstein admitted he was wrong. Instead of stubbornly defending his original theory, he called his mistake the biggest blunder of his career and moved forward with the new evidence. That's what made Einstein a genius. Not just his intelligence, but his ability to change his mind when presented with better information. When you accept that you might be wrong, a few magical things happen. You become more open-minded. Instead of clinging to old beliefs, you start looking for truth, even if it challenges your assumptions. You learn faster. If you refuse to admit when you're wrong, you'll keep repeating the same mistakes. But if you embrace being wrong, you correct your thinking and grow. You become a better decision maker. People who can admit when they're wrong are better at adjusting to new information and making smarter choices. So, how do you train yourself to actually enjoy being wrong? Try these 3 mindset shifts. 1. Replace "I'm right" with "let's find out." Instead of treating your beliefs like unshakable truths, treat them like working theories, just like a scientist would. Next time you're in a discussion, instead of saying, "I know I'm right," try saying, "let's explore this and see what we find." 2. Ask, what would change my mind? Most people defend their beliefs instinctively. Instead, ask yourself, what evidence would actually convince me to change my mind? If you can't think of an answer, it's a sign you're being too rigid in your thinking. 3. View mistakes as stepping stones, not roadblocks. Every time you realize you were wrong about something, reframe it. I was wrong. I failed. I was wrong. I learned. The more you do this, the easier it gets. Over time, you'll start seeing mistakes not as personal flaws, but as opportunities for growth. Pick a belief you strongly hold, something you feel certain about. Then ask yourself, what would change my mind? If you can't answer, it means you're not thinking scientifically. You're thinking like a preacher, prosecutor, or politician, just like in lesson 1. But if you can identify what evidence could change your perspective, congratulations. You're on the path to becoming a lifelong learner. And the best part? Every time you're proven wrong, you won't feel defeated. You'll feel excited because it means you've just taken another step toward becoming smarter, wiser, and more open-minded. So go ahead, enjoy being wrong. It's the secret to getting things right. Lesson 3. Don't hang out with echo chambers. Imagine you're in a room where everyone nods in agreement with everything you say. No one questions your ideas. No one challenges your beliefs. And every opinion you hold is met with applause. It feels nice, right? But here's the problem. You're not learning anything new. This is what's known as an echo chamber, a space, whether online or in real life, where only one perspective is reinforced. Echo chambers make us feel safe, but they also trap us in a bubble of our own biases. At first glance, sticking with like-minded people seems harmless. After all, it's comforting to be surrounded by those who share our views. But over time, echo chambers can make us less open-minded. If we never hear opposing perspectives, we assume our way of thinking is the only way, more extreme in our beliefs. Research shows that people in echo chambers tend to develop stronger, more rigid opinions over time, easily manipulated. When we only hear one side of a story, we become blind to potential flaws in our thinking. In other words, if you're never challenged, you're not growing. The world's best thinkers don't just tolerate disagreement. They actively seek it out. They understand that true learning happens when you expose yourself to different perspectives. Example: Abraham Lincoln and the team of rivals. When Abraham Lincoln became president of the United States, he did something shocking. He filled his cabinet with people who had openly criticized him, even those who had run against him. Instead of surrounding himself with yes men, he invited opposition into the room. Why? Because he valued different viewpoints. He knew that hearing other perspectives, even those that contradicted his own, would make him a better leader. Lesson: smart leaders don't just listen to people who agree with them. They listen to those who challenge them. Example: Elon Musk and open criticism. Elon Musk, one of the most innovative minds of our time, has publicly stated that he actively seeks out criticism. He once said, "I'd rather someone tell me what's wrong with my ideas than what's right." Instead of staying in an echo chamber of admirers, he encourages his team to poke holes in his thinking. Lesson: if you want to grow, you must invite criticism, not avoid it. So, how can you escape the trap of only hearing one side? Here are 3 powerful strategies. 1. Follow people who disagree with you. If your social media feed is full of people who think exactly like you, it's time to shake things up. Follow accounts or subscribe to channels that challenge your beliefs. Not to argue, but to understand their perspective. Action step: right now, find one person on social media whose views are different from yours and start following them. 2. Ask, what if I'm wrong? Instead of trying to win arguments, try to learn from them. When you hear an opposing opinion, don't shut it down immediately. Instead, ask yourself, what if they're right? What evidence would convince me to change my mind? This simple shift in mindset makes you a better thinker, not just a better debater. 3. Have real conversations with people who think differently. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations, seek them out. Find someone who has a different worldview and talk to them. Not to convince them, but to understand their perspective. Listen more than you speak. Ask questions instead of making statements. Be curious, not combative. This week, challenge yourself to read an article or book by someone with a different opinion. Engage in a respectful discussion with someone who sees the world differently. Follow someone on social media who challenges your views. Not to argue, not to prove them wrong, but to understand. Because the truth is, if you're never exposed to different ideas, you're not thinking. You're just repeating. So step out of the echo chamber. Your growth depends on it. We like to believe we make rational decisions, but in reality, our emotions often control us. Some of the most powerful forces shaping our thoughts and actions are FOMO, fear of missing out, loss aversion, and social proof. These psychological triggers can either keep us stuck or help us grow. FOMO makes us feel anxious about missing opportunities, whether it's a new investment, a career move, or even a social event. This fear often pushes us to make impulsive choices, but it can also be a tool for growth. Use FOMO wisely. Instead of fearing missing out on trends, fear missing out on learning. Be the person who constantly seeks new knowledge, challenges old beliefs, and adapts to change. People hate losing twice as much as they enjoy winning. This is why we often cling to outdated ideas, jobs, or habits even when they no longer serve us. We fear that changing our minds means admitting failure. Reframe it. What if staying the same is the real loss? The most successful people, from Elon Musk to Ray Dalio, understand that rethinking isn't losing. It's winning. We naturally look to others when making decisions. If everyone around us believes something, we assume it must be right. But just because an idea is popular doesn't mean it's true. Think independently. Instead of blindly following the crowd, ask yourself, is this belief serving me? The ability to think differently is what separates leaders from followers. The difference between stagnation and success is the ability to change your mind. If you refuse to rethink, you risk falling behind in an ever-changing world. Would you rather be stubborn and outdated or open-minded and ahead of the curve? The choice is yours. Now, here's your challenge. Think of one strong belief you hold and question it. What's something you recently rethought? Did changing your mind help you grow? Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. And if you found this video valuable, don't just watch. Hit that subscribe button for more life-changing insights. Because the smartest people aren't the ones who know everything, but the ones who keep learning.